Hey guys, what's up? It is the one and only RJ21 here, and today I'm going to be recapping the events of Week 6 of Big Brother Canada 12 and giving my updated power rankings. And oh my god, is there a lot to talk about. Week 6 starts off with the Movie Night Massacre, essentially the replacement of a double eviction. Now, typically in these videos, I don't typically talk about non-game related things, but I have to give my kudos to the Big Brother Canada production team on this one because the overall episode and this twist as a whole was an absolute production. Like, everything about the set pieces, to the drama, to the editing, to the whole setting of all the tone around this whole situation, it was all so masterfully crafted that I have to give my kudos. This was genuinely one of the most entertaining twists I've seen in Big Brother in a pretty long time, and the drama and the suspense built throughout this entire twist was just an absolute treat to watch. So thank you, Big Brother Canada production, for putting so much effort into crafting such an entertaining twist. But back to the game. The house guests gather in the backyard and learn from Arissa that this eviction is going to take place all in one day, meaning that somebody is going to be leaving the Big Brother Canada house that day, just one day after Matthew's eviction. The first competition is revealed to not be an HOH competition, but rather an immunity competition. And this immunity competition is very, very important. Not only to guarantee yourself safety throughout this entire twist, but the order in which you fall out of this competition matters. The competition is essentially an endurance competition where house guests have their heads in a liminal space and they have to balance a glass jar on a beam while holding some chains. If you drop your glass, you're out of the competition. Ultimately, the competition comes down to Tola and Bayleigh, and after lasting over an hour, Bayleigh ends up coming out on top, winning her first competition of the season and having first pick for the upcoming twist. Now, you might be wondering, what is this upcoming twist? Well, here's how it works. Apparently, everybody is going to be casted into the Movie Night Massacre in some sort of role. Those roles being HOH, 2 nominees, 3 power veto players, a slop house holder, and somebody getting their eviction vote nullified or canceled for this eviction only. The order in which you fell in the competition matters, as they would go in reverse order, meaning if you fell first in the immunity competition, you would pick last. And since Bayleigh won the competition, she would pick first, meaning the person who came in second would pick second, so on and so forth. Here's how the twist would also work. House guests would pick one of their fellow house guests and place them into a role. And adding on to that, house guests that pick afterwards are not allowed to change or recast those roles, meaning that once somebody is placed into a spot, they have to stick there. And adding on to that, they can't pick themselves, meaning that if their name is still up there, they cannot put themselves into whatever role they want. They're not allowed to do that. And this twist creates so much drama because you have to not only consider what your choice will have, but you have to consider what other people after you will do. So technically speaking, people going first have the most power, but they have the most variance in their decisions. The chain ultimately goes like this. Bayleigh has first pick and she wants to keep her allies safe, so she chooses Victoria as HOH. Tola came second in the competition, so Tola wanted to go after his target, and he decides to put Kayla up as a nominee. Todd came in third in the competition, and to ensure that the target in Kayla would go home if nom stayed the same, Todd chooses to nominate Avery. Lexus is after that, and after seeing the nominations, Lexus wants strong competitors in the veto to keep nominations the same. So, Lexus chooses Tola to compete in the power veto competition. Anthony is after Lexus, and just after debating about possibly putting one of his allies into the veto competition, he decides to nullify Elijah's eviction vote, making it so that he cannot cast a vote tonight. After Anthony is Victoria, and Victoria decides, after seeing the twist, after seeing all the placements, that she really doesn't have any power in this situation. So she ultimately just gives the season-long slot pass to Anthony. After Victoria is Avery, and Avery realizes that she is on the block. And seeing that there's only 2 names left in 2 positions that mean exactly the same thing, she decides to put Todd up as the second power veto player. Elijah with the final pick of who to put up, sees everything that's going on and has the last pick and decides to put Lexus as the final power of veto player. We then go back to the entire group of house guests where Arissa reveals the results to all of the house guests, where it is revealed that Victoria is the HOH and Kayla and Avery are the nominees, while Anthony has the slot pass, Elijah can't vote, and Tola, Todd, and Lexus are the 3 power veto players. Absolutely blindsiding Kayla. She had no idea this was coming whatsoever. Now, this power veto competition was essentially just one big puzzle. They had to drink these 3 quote-unquote pints of blood to unlock a code. Once they unlock the code, they can get their pieces, and they have to assemble a 3D cube. First person to assemble the cube wins the power veto. It's edited to seem like it's close, but it really wasn't, as Kayla ends up winning this power veto, saving herself in the process. After Kayla wins the veto, everybody is scrambling, and it's debated who should go up on the block. It's pretty quickly clocked that Tola and Todd are the 2 people that put up Avery and Kayla up on the block, so people are campaigning hard for Tola to go up on the block. However, Victoria, wanting to appease Anthony, wanted to play it safe and just put up Elijah. And Elijah, hearing this, gets very concerned because he thinks he is most likely going home, which is a pretty fair assumption, but still he has those concerns and actively tries campaigning to Victoria to not put him up on the block. Ultimately, it doesn't work, as come the veto ceremony, Kayla, rightfully so, uses the power veto on herself to save herself, and Victoria names Elijah as the replacement nominee. Now, Elijah does make some last-minute pitches to try and save himself, but ultimately he realizes that the votes just aren't there. So, come the eviction vote, Elijah is evicted in a unanimous 6-0 vote, becoming the 6th house guest to leave the Big Brother Canada house, but becomes the first member of the jury. The next round of gameplay this week starts off with the back to the drawing board HOH competition. Essentially, it's a puzzle competition where house guests would go head to head, and the first house guest to solve the puzzle would win their round, eliminating their opponent. But if they buzzed in with the incorrect answer, they themselves would be eliminated. Ultimately, the final 2 comes down to Avery and Lexus, with Avery winning HOH, winning her 2nd HOH of the season, after literally just being HOH like 2 days ago. But that's besides the point. After some quick conversations, Avery pretty quickly comes to the realization that she just wants to have an easy breezy week. So at the nomination ceremony, Avery chooses to nominate Todd and Tola, with both of them being potential targets. She doesn't really care which one of them goes, she just wants to ensure that one of them does go, because they were both either directly or indirectly responsible for her going up on the block and possibly going home. So she just wants to ensure that at least one of them goes home. This should have been a pretty easy week. However, things start changing really fast. Kayla and Lexus have a conversation in the bathroom about protecting the Hot Chocolate Alliance, and Bayleigh being one of the biggest threats to that alliance, with Bayleigh possibly clocking the alliance's existence. So Kayla proposes the idea to Lexus of backdooring Bayleigh, which definitely does not spell good for Bayleigh's game. However, Bayleigh and Todd have a conversation about the Movie Night Massacre, in which Todd reveals that Lexus wanted to vote Avery out, had the numbers been there, which this information absolutely tanks Lexus's game, in which Bayleigh goes to Victoria, and Bayleigh, Victoria, and Avery eventually have a conversation about backdooring Lexus if the power veto is used. However, in a conversation between Victoria and Anthony, Victoria reveals to Anthony that Lexus is the backdoor target, and Anthony, not wanting any of this to happen because Lexus is his closest ally, puts in the work and plants the seeds of doubt that Kayla is actually the target, and Kayla should be the one that should be going home, because earlier in the week when Elijah was evicted, he decided to tell Kayla that if Victoria is sitting on the block next to anybody, Victoria would stay and the other person would go, painting a bit of a target on Victoria, and Kayla chose not to reveal that information to anybody except for Anthony. So Anthony weaponizes that information and turns Victoria against Kayla. Anthony correctly predicts how impulsive of a player Victoria is, and Victoria, as expected, decides to flip the target from Lexus to Kayla, because Kayla is supposedly coming after Victoria, which is a bit fabricated by Anthony. Now, going into the power veto competition, Todd and Tola, alongside Lexus, Bayleigh, and Kayla, are all selected to compete in the power veto competition. The power veto competition is basically split up into two parts. You have a rod maze where they have to navigate through and not touch any of the poles or knock them over, but they're blindfolded while doing so, so they can't see where they're going. Once you pass through all of the rods without knocking any of them over, you have to solve a puzzle. But the puzzle is quote-unquote blindfolded in the sense that you can only use your sense of touch to feel what the puzzle pieces feel like to assemble the puzzle. First house guest to solve their puzzle would win the power of veto. Now, the competition's actually pretty close, with all of the house guests working on the puzzle at approximately the same time, but ultimately, Bayleigh ends up winning this competition, winning her first power veto and her second competition this week, which is pretty impressive. With it being pretty apparent that Bayleigh is going to use the power veto to save Todd, the question of who the replacement nominee is still a bit up in the air between Lexus and Kayla. However, Victoria puts in the work to convince Avery that Kayla, despite being Avery's #1 ally outside of Victoria, needs to be the target. Victoria goes hard in convincing Avery that Kayla is against them and Kayla has been throwing them under the bus. And if that wasn't enough, Anthony and Lexus have a conversation in which Anthony further cements the lies of Kayla and painting a bigger target on Kayla, in which Lexus presents Victoria with information that Kayla supposedly was saying that she wanted to target people who have HOH wins, which essentially means Avery and Victoria, which just further digs a bigger grave for Kayla. Now, Bayleigh, of all people, correctly clocks that this is a load of BS, because how convenient is it that Lexus is finally coming up with this information as Bayleigh wins the power veto? And why, of all people, would Kayla be the one presenting to backdoor Bayleigh, of all people? Even though that was technically correct because Kayla was trying to do that, but that was under a different context. Ultimately, all of this hard work that gets put in is almost stopped at the 11th hour. However, at the 11th hour, this plan is almost ruined by Tola, of all people, because he didn't get his marching orders from Anthony and almost says the wrong thing. But ultimately, this doesn't factor into it that much, as come the veto ceremony, Bayleigh, as expected, uses the power of veto to save Todd. And Avery, having to name a replacement nominee, decides to pull out the knife and backstabs Kayla, naming her as the replacement nominee. Kayla is, rightfully so, absolutely blindsided by this, as she had no idea this was coming, and she had no idea this was going to happen. So Kayla confronts Avery about the whole situation, and Avery reveals the rumors that have been spreading throughout the house, which leads to Kayla having the first house meeting of the season. And Kayla goes hard in trying to defend herself from all of these lies that have been so interwoven within the structure of the house that nobody can even really differentiate between what are lies and what are truths, as pretty much everybody thinks that Kayla has been throwing them under the bus. So it seems like Kayla's a pretty done deal to go home. But Kayla does do some last minute campaign to try and convince the Hot Chocolate Alliance to keep her in the game, because it is what is best for their games, and trying to get them to the end of this game to ensure that one of them wins. Ultimately, it doesn't work, as come eviction night, Kayla is evicted in a unanimous vote of 5-0, officially becoming the second member of the jury. Now it's time to get into the power rankings. At number 9, the first person evicted this week, we have Elijah. And Elijah's run on this season is just disappointing. I mean, he doesn't do anything this season except sit up on the block. Literally every single time he didn't have some sort of immunity or some sort of protection or safety, he was on the block. Rightfully so, because he put himself in that position. I said it in the beginning when he volunteered, and I'm going to keep saying it about his game. Him volunteering to be a pawn week 2 was the worst decision for his game. And he does show some remorse for that in his exit interviews. He does address that that probably was the worst decision he made that led him down this path. And yeah, why would you volunteer to be a pawn, especially that early on in the game? volunteering to be a pawn, sure, it might buy you some social capital in those first beginning weeks and might build some trust, but then other people are going to recognize that if you're fine being on the block, they're going to keep putting you up on the block. And that's exactly what happened. He kept getting put up on the block. And more quickly than he realized, he became expendable to like nearly everyone. Where everyone was like, oh, Elijah, we can always just send him out whenever. He was never a valuable asset to anybody. He was simply just a number that was just waiting to get picked off. And the fact that he thinks that he would have stayed, for a moment, he really thought that he was going to stay over Avery, of all people. Like, I don't know if that's a bit delusional, but the fact that he thinks that he was going to stay next to Avery, of all people, like, did he not realize how well insulated Avery was in the house? Like, I get that he was trying to diminish his threat level and he was trying to be like, oh, I'm not a threat. You can always just take me out because I'm always going to be on the block. But at some point, you're going to not be on the block. I think this was just his time where the numbers just weren't on his side and that he just had no more runway left. And there just really wasn't anywhere left for him to go. And his run on this season is just a bit disappointing because from the way he talks about the game, it seems like he has at least a somewhat decent head on his shoulders and that he seems to at least somewhat understand baseline strategy, but he just chooses to not act on it because I don't even know why. It's just he just chose not to act on it, and it was just really disappointing to see. But this is where Elijah ends up being the first member of the jury, which is why he is here at number 9. At number 8, the second person evicted this week, we have Kayla. And it's very rare that you see a person's game just crumble and diminish as fast as Kayla's did, as Kayla's game literally crumbled within 1 week. Like, that just seems crazy to me. I guess it's not that rare when you're considering that this is Big Brother Canada, where people are turning on their allies left and right. Like, hell, it even happened literally earlier on this season. So I guess it's not the most uncommon thing, but still, Kayla was in a great position before coming into this week. I did mention how people were starting to clock Kayla as a bit of a threat and how she was someone that out of everyone in like the power trio of Avery, Victoria, and Kayla, I did say that like she was probably the one on the bottom out of that, but I was not expecting her to go home this early. Like, I definitely wasn't expecting her to become the second member of jury. Like, what? Second member of jury? That's crazy to me. I feel like Kayla's eviction this week is a little bit icky. I mean, if you watched like the uncut like digital daily of how that house meeting went, it was really bad in the sense that like they were gaslighting the hell out of Kayla. Like, they were really saying like, you said this and you need to apologize for this, and she was so adamant in saying no, I didn't, because she didn't say those things. And it feels a little bit, it does feel icky how adamant people were saying and that you said this and you need to apologize. And it's like, the fact that like they were so strong-arming her into that situation and forcing her to fold and apologize for things she never even really said, it just all felt a little bit icky to me. And I definitely think that that whole situation definitely is going to leave a bit of a bitter tone in Kayla's jury decision, especially towards the women in like Victoria and Avery. Like, she's not gonna forget that. And I think it wasn't the right move for anybody who chose for it. Like, for anybody on the women's side, I don't think it was the right move. I'll talk about it more when I get to them. But for Kayla should not have gone home this week. She really should not have. She should not have even gone home like this round. Like, if she went home in the Movie Night Massacre, yeah, that makes sense. Like, she got put up on the block by her opposition. Like, that makes sense. But by her own closest ally? Like, you have to be kidding me. I think Kayla deserved better. I have a lot of faith in Kayla as a player. Sure, she's a little bit messy, but she at least understands what the game is about. She does understand the strategy a lot more than somebody like an Elijah. Like, I have much more faith in somebody like Kayla to do well on any given season of Big Brother, and it would be interesting to see her come back. But is she going to come back? After this brutal blindside, I'm not going to count on it. So, because of that, she is here as the second member of the jury, here at number 8. Now it's time to get to the house guests that are actually still in the house. At number 7, the person I believe to be in the worst position in the house is Tola. And I've had Tola at the towards the bottom of my list for quite a while now, because I've been saying that like he really doesn't have any ties outside of Anthony's side, and that remains to be persistent. Like, he doesn't have anybody except for like Anthony and Lexus and maybe Todd, but Todd is a bit wishy-washy in terms of his loyalties as of right now, so we can't really know where his head is at. So in all actuality, he only has two solid allies in Anthony and Lexus. And sure, Tola can win some competition to keep himself safe, but how long can he really win these competitions? It's pretty apparent that he is the number one target for the women's side of the house. And in all honesty, he should have been the one who got evicted this week, not Kayla, because what sense does it make? Like, if you recognize Tola is your biggest threat and he's sitting on the block, why would you leave him on the block? It just doesn't make sense. I feel like the sporadicness of people's gameplay this season is what is benefiting Tola, because somehow every time he's on the block, a bigger target always emerges next to him and they end up going home over him, which is kind of insane. But I feel like his luck is going to run out sooner rather than later. There's no way he's going to get this lucky every single week. I feel like eventually his time is going to run out and he's going to get evicted, and he just doesn't have, I just don't imagine him having any runway left. I feel like his time is coming up unless he wins out, like unless he goes on an insane comp run to get to the end. I think he's going home soon. Like, he sucks at puzzles. Like, he even admits it himself. He sucks at puzzles. And so I just don't see Tola going much further this season. He doesn't have the social capital to build bonds with the other side, to maybe lower his threat level in any sense. He just doesn't have that, nor does he have the skill level to do that. So I really don't have any hope for Tola moving forward in this game unless he wins out, which is why I have him here at the bottom at number 7. At number 6, I have Bayleigh. And Bayleigh is essentially in the same position as Tola, except I feel more confident in the bonds that Bayleigh has over Tola. While Tola only confidently has like Anthony and Lexus, Bayleigh has a bunch more allies. Victoria, Avery, and Todd. Like, sure, that's only one more ally, but still, that's more people on her side willing to protect her. Now, keep in mind, I think she is the primary target for Anthony's side of the house. I think if Tola or Lexus were to win an HOH, I think Bayleigh would be the primary target. And worst of all, I think Bayleigh would most likely get put up on the block next to somebody like a Victoria or an Avery, which would all but confirm that Bayleigh would go home. Factoring in the fact that she can win competitions and that she's proven she can win stuff now, she's now just furthering her threat level and making herself a much bigger threat that needs to be taken out sooner rather than later. I am thoroughly impressed by Bayleigh though. I think the fact that she's been able to play from the bottom for so long and she's been able to survive for this long with as dynamic of a house as the Big Brother Canada 12 house, I give her a lot of credit. You know, she's doing a pretty good job in pledging her loyalties and allegiances and sticking with them. And I think because she's pledged her allegiances so much and everybody knows where she stands in the house, that has made her a bit of an asset. However, that asset is now turning into a liability, because now that everybody knows how confidently she is with Victoria's side of the house and with the women, she's now pretty much the clear number one target for that side of the house that needs to be taken out. So that definitely does make me worry about her position in that sense. However, Bayleigh has now proven that she does have the potential to possibly win competitions to save herself. So there is some hope for her in that sense, but is she going to comp out to the end? Possibly, but I don't exactly have the most faith in that, so I can't really put any money on that. So because of that, I have to keep Bayleigh here at number 6. At number 5, I have Todd. And Todd is in a really interesting position. I think I mentioned it last week when I said that Todd is in a really interesting swing vote position where he can choose to remain loyal to Bayleigh and the women's side of the house, or he could be that swing vote that Anthony's side needs to take over the house. And he did capitalize on that during the Movie Night Massacre. He did try and target Kayla and try and get her out of the house. Mind you, he got caught in the act and it essentially just kind of blew up his position. But he at least shows that he does have the killer instinct to make a big move like that. I think people are still underestimating Todd in this game. when they really shouldn't be. Like, Todd is playing this game. I think they should have known after the executive veto that Todd is here to play this game, and he is not one to be underestimated. And he is playing the game, and he is actually doing a pretty decent job at changing up his positioning. He has a really solid final two with Bayleigh, as it seems, but he does maintain a lot of solid bonds with the other side of the house in Tola and Anthony. So he does have those benefits in those sense. So to a certain extent, he does still maintain his swing vote position. However, he needs to either maintain a lower threat level and maintain a low profile so he doesn't get caught playing both sides like Kayla, or he needs to choose a side. I don't think it's going to be smart for him to choose a side because I think he's much more of a floater player in the sense that he can really waver with his loyalties depending on who's in power. So I think he should really play on that. But Todd definitely has the connects to go a lot further in this game than people are giving him credit for. Todd was initially going to be that meat shield for the women to use, but because he's been able to build these solid bonds with the other side of the house, he's no longer going to be in that pawn position that the vote gets flipped on. I don't think he's going to get put up on the block by the likes of somebody like a Tola or a Lexus. You know, like, he's built those strong bonds to the point where I don't think they're going to target him anytime soon. However, when the numbers really start to dwindle down, I think that's when Todd's going to be in the most trouble, because while he does have connections with both sides, he doesn't have any solid loyalties outside of Bayleigh. So that does concern me, but as it stands right now, if he continues to play on this swing vote position, I think he's going to continue to go much further in this game than people expect, which is why I have him here at number 5. At number 4, I have the outgoing HOH in Avery. And Avery made quite possibly the worst move for her game possible. I forgot where I saw it. Maybe it was on a live stream or something. But somebody called Avery wannabe. And I feel like that is the funniest thing ever because of how accurate it is. Going after Kayla was quite possibly the worst move Avery could have done. Outside of Victoria, Kayla was Avery's number one ally. Like, it just makes no sense in any world why Avery would target Kayla, her number one ally. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, even if you're hearing that Kayla is throwing your name out there under the bus, you don't take her out this week. You have 2 clear targets that need to go home, that you know for a fact are coming after you in Todd and Tola. And you've been trying to come at them for weeks. You literally nominated Tola twice. You think Tola is not going to take that and use that against you and put you up next week? No. Like, even assuming that Kayla's lies are a truth and that Kayla truly is coming after Avery and Victoria in that sense, why would you not keep her around? If she's this messy and this sloppy to where her targets are finding out this information, she's clearly going to be public enemy number 1. You leave her in the house as a shield, the other side takes her out for you, and now you don't have any bad blood on your hands because you weren't the one to take her out. But I guess that thought just wasn't running through. Also, where were the critical thinking skills? Like, what? Kayla said it herself. Think about the people who are saying it. Why would Anthony, Lexus, and Tola, 3 people you know are not technically on the same side of the house as you, be saying the same thing about one of your allies? Does that not seem suspicious? Apparently not, because she chose to trust them. What reason does she have to trust Tola? You put him up twice. Like, sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. I'm getting a little confrontational, but God, it just doesn't make sense. She absolutely shattered her positioning. Like, if Kayla is this big threat that everybody's concerned about, you keep her in the house so they don't come after you. But now that you've gotten rid of that shield, and now that Todd has proven his loyalties to the other side of the house, who's going up on the block next to Bayleigh if Tola or Lexus win HOH? It's Avery. Like, from Avery's position, it makes no sense. She's just shattered any sort of like foundational strength she has in this game. All of the solid social work she's done has now been shattered, and now she's probably one of the biggest targets in the house. If Bayleigh wins veto, Avery's out of the house wholeheartedly. Like, now that everybody's clocking how big of a threat Avery is, they need to take her out. I know I'm saying a lot of negative things about Avery, and it seems like I should put Avery lower. However, Avery still has so many good inroads with her side of the house. I mean, Bayleigh and Victoria are like undyingly loyal to her. So she does have that going for her, but her threat level has just skyrocketed this past week. And I foresee her going home much sooner than I initially anticipated, which is why I have her here at number 4. At number 3, I have Lexus. And Lexus is in a bit of a precarious position. I mean, to be fair, everybody outside of the top 2 are in a pretty precarious position considering like how willing this house is to target one another now. But Lexus actually did a lot of effective work this week. She was the backdoor target, which I do have to knock her a bit for, but she actually made the correct game move in really shattering Victoria's power structure. Like, it was pretty apparent that Victoria was gaining a lot, and I mean a lot of traction in this game. So Lexus being a part of the plan to take out Kayla, somebody fundamentally like a part of Victoria's power structure, taking her out of the game really just crumbles anything that Victoria set up and sets herself up in a much better position. Mind you, I'm still not super confident about Lexus because she's very similar to Avery in that if somebody on Victoria's side, whether that be like Bayleigh, wins HOH, Lexus is going on the block. And then if Tola wins veto, Lexus is most likely going to be the one that goes home, which is horrible for her. Like, that is like doomsday worst case scenario for her. But still, like, I still think that she's in a pretty solid position. She does have her solid ties with Anthony and Tola. She is mending bridges with the other side of the house in Victoria and Avery. So they are trusting her a bit more, but it is still a bit precarious. From what I'm saying, it sounds like Lexus should be worse than Avery, but at least Lexus didn't shatter her position. She didn't actively make her position worse, and she didn't make herself a bigger target. Like, she was already a big target because of her showmance with Matt. So that automatically put her on the bottom with the women. But now that Matt's out of the game, it's just pretty apparent that Lexus isn't quote unquote for the girls, which is just stupid. Like, you saw during the executive veto that she eliminated Matt. So you know that Lexus is for the girls. So why are we still saying that she's not for the girls? Like, the only reason she's not for the girls, like y'all are saying, is because y'all keep excluding her, making her feel like she isn't a part of the girls, which is why she's choosing to not work with the girls as solidly. Because, like she said, the girls judge her, but the guys in Anthony and Tola don't, ironically enough, which is why she's not working with them. Like, just make it make sense. Like, what? But anyways, in terms of Lexus, I think she's in a pretty fragile and delicate position, but I do think that she does have the solid inroads that she needs to go further in this game. And with the whole house just being absolutely shaken up after this absolutely chaotic HOH, I think she is in a bit of a better position than before, which is why I have her here at number 3. At number 2, I have Victoria for the first time this season, because this was an absolutely abysmal week for her. Not only did she lose Elijah, who is a solid, just loyal ally and number to have in general, she loses Kayla, her closest ally within the Hot Chocolate Alliance, that would have taken her to the end. Like, would have taken her to at least Final 3. And she chooses to get rid of both of them. Like, she was in such a good position. She had the majority of the numbers. Coming into the final 9, she had like a 6-3 lead on Anthony. Maybe even a 7-2 if Lexus wanted to jump ship. But she lost that lead, and now it seems like it's a 4-3 lead in favor of Anthony, with Victoria only confidently having Avery and Bayleigh. Todd is a little bit wishy-washy because he hasn't really been pledging his loyalties. Maybe he does lean more towards Victoria's side because of Bayleigh, but still, nothing like that is really set in stone. Victoria made a horrible move this week. Like, getting rid of Kayla was horrible. Kayla was undyingly loyal to Victoria, but Victoria just hears one thing about one random comment, and she's like, yep, take her out. Don't need her. Get her out. She's targeting me. I'm coming for her. Like, think about it. Like, all you have to do is think about the comment for like 2 seconds and then come to whatever decision you want to. But don't just immediately hear something and be like, yep, she's got to go now. Like, she was clocked hard about how impulsive of a player she was being. I was giving her some kudos in the past about how she has been changing up her gameplay style, in that, she seems to be a lot more level-headed. She seems to be managing her social relationships a lot more and building those bonds with the people she's not as close with. But this week just showcased that she hasn't really changed as much as a game player as we initially thought. She's still the same chaotic backstabber that she was on Big Brother Canada 9. All she needs to hear is one comment about somebody directly coming after her, and she becomes so tunnel vision on getting that person out. It's insane. And that's what happened to Kayla. But if she really stopped for a second and looked at the bigger picture, even if this information about Kayla was true, which it wasn't, but in the scenario in which it was true, why would you get rid of her immediately when you have known threats on the other side of the house that are directly coming after you and your allies, which they literally proved like the day before in a big twist? Like, it doesn't make sense. Make it make sense. She's not making it make sense, and that's why it's like so frustrating, because Victoria was literally primed to win this game, but with everything around her just shattering, she has essentially crumbled the once solid foundation she had. She had such a set path to get to the end, but now she has to go down this zigzaggy and winding road that's going to be much more difficult for her to navigate. And does she have the skill to do that? I don't think so, because people are now starting to talk about if the opportunity arises to possibly take a shot at her, which does worry me. But she is still the leader of her side of the house. She still has people on her side willing to literally fall on their sword for her, which is good for her, but still, she's not in as good of a position as she was in previous weeks, which is why I have to put her here at number 2. At number 1, the person I believe to be in the best position in the house is Anthony. And everything this week went according to Anthony's plan. Maybe not necessarily according to his plan, but everything went his way. Everything he wanted to happen, happened. While his allies did miss the shot in taking out Kayla, he still got his way in Elijah going up on the block over Tola, because Victoria could have put Tola up on the block and potentially sent him home, but Anthony was able to convince Victoria that putting Elijah up on the block was in her best interest, when it really wasn't. Now, potentially, if Tola does go up on the block, then technically Avery could go home in a 3-2 vote because Elijah can't vote, which technically means that it would still go Anthony's way, which just further proves that what the work he was doing this week was stellar in terms of what we saw. Elijah going home is still a good option for him, because he knows that Elijah isn't on his side and Elijah is on Victoria's side. So getting rid of a pawn and a number in that sense really does weaken Victoria. But I think the masterclass he showed in getting Avery and Victoria to turn on Kayla and send her out was absolutely stellar. It was masterful gameplay. I know people don't want to say, oh, we can't call it masterful because we didn't really see the whole picture. And I do get that to a certain extent, but you have to give credit where credit is due. He absolutely masterminded that. I mean, the way he just immediately clocked Victoria as a player and just immediately recognized how Victoria operates as a player and used this information that he's been sitting on to his advantage just shows that Anthony is a very good player. People don't want to give him his flowers because of his misogynistic tendencies, and I do agree with that. Some of the comments he does make about some of the women are pretty icky and definitely do need to get checked, and some of his behaviors are definitely a bit questionable, but in terms of his gameplay, you can't deny that he is a very good game player. And the stone was already set in Victoria's mind, but then he went further in convincing Lexus to further cement and further dig Kayla's grave. That's just showing that everything was working out in his way. Adding on to that in the house meeting, everybody believed him. Everybody believed him. And he's now building bonds with people you wouldn't expect. He's built a bond with Bayleigh of all people. What? Bayleigh is now making comments that she either wants to make a final 3 with Victoria and Anthony, or actually go to Final 3 with Victoria and Anthony over Todd. Like, Bayleigh, of all people, is saying this. I know I've made jokes in the past, like, oh, ha, Bayleigh's a man-hater, this, that, and the third, like, funny, like, oh, but, like, really, like, Bayleigh is for the women. Bayleigh said in her preseason interviews that she wants 4 women in the end, but Anthony has been able to break through that barrier, and now Bayleigh wants to consider bringing Anthony so dangerously close to the end game. It's actually insane. I know it sounds like I'm just praising Anthony a lot, which I feel like I should be, because the work that Anthony put in this week to improve his position is absolutely amazing. Like, the work he put in was literally crazy to watch. And because of all of this work he's done to improve his position and strengthen the control he now has over the house, I have to put him here at number 1. Overall, this week of Big Brother was absolutely insane. I am a little bit bummed about how long we had to wait for digital dailies, because it's like, at the end of the day, the results were so anticlimactic. Like, did it even really matter? And I definitely would have liked to see, like, the whole Kayla downfall play out in its entirety in real time. But still, this week was so entertaining. We had such a well-crafted twist in the Movie Night Massacre that created such entertaining television and so much drama and suspense. It was an absolute treat to watch. And then even just the regular week of gameplay with Avery winning HOH and turning her back on her number 1 ally in Kayla was just absolutely crazy to watch. Like, I guess the only way you could really describe this week is just crazy. It was chaotic. It was all over the place. It was messy as hell. And I absolutely live for the mess. Like, it was so entertaining. Obviously, this season is becoming a bit of a steamroll in the sense that it's literally just Anthony and Victoria just dominating this entire house. But the gameplay is so dynamic and crazy, but, like, not dynamic in the sense of, like, oh, it's so innovative and it's so creative in that everything is constantly shifting. Like, no, it's dynamic because of how chaotic these players are and how quickly everybody can just turn on each other just, like, instantly. I think that's what's making it as dynamic as it is, which is just further boosting the entertainment value of this season. I will take a chaotic mess over a boring steamroll any day of the week. I'll take that type of season over anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd rather have crazy over just boring. You know what I'm saying? But that's all I have to say. Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends if you have any of those. And I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.